Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
HR Famous podcast. We are back. I am Tim Sackett, and joining with me, my friends Jessica Lee and Kris Dunn. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good. Sitting in the headquarters of my home, meaning my son's room. All good. Still working from home. That whole life.
Tim, just watching the game, having a bud. You know.
Are there any games to watch, by the way? Like,
No.
I'm not into sports, so there's no sports.
There
right?
is. There's the Premier League soccer and stuff like that.
But no one's in the stands.
Professional
right?
golf.
So, Jlee, what I mean is by watching the game, having a bud, I mean the collective game of life.
Oh,
and
okay.
there certainly is a lot of that going on these days. So I am still technically, Tim, watching the game, having a bud.
And
There's
by
a
bud, he
jingle.
means Powerade Zero.
You
Yes.
can make a lot of money in the game of life.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Hey,
Remember
there you go.
that?
Jlee with the throwback.
Hey, by the way, it's funny. Professional golf has they're on their second tournament already, and they can't have fans. But if you have a house that's close enough to these courses, you can obviously be in your own yard, right? And so usually the whole golf etiquette is super quiet, and the golf clap and all of that, right? Like you don't say a word when someone's singing or swinging, and so there's these houses across on these golf courses, and like little kids will come out and be standing in the yard like screaming at these guys, and just to watch them is the funniest thing ever because they're so not used to this, and all of a sudden now they have to deal with it, which I think is awesome. So hey, there it goes. Hey, by the way, I wanted to share with you. I shared a recording, and if I can get our producer to put this up, I will try. So I had a guy call and leave me a voicemail. And basically sounds like a young 20-ish. And here's the gist of the call. Hey, yeah, I was calling about that job. So I'm interested. Just call me back. Hey, what does that job pay? And all right, here's my number, blah, blah, blah. And I'm out.
Hello, Tim. This is Brennan. I was just wondering if you could hit me back up on that job. And I was wondering as well as if how much you were hiring per hour for that. For sure. And my number is, have a nice day.
By the way, so I run a staffing company, so I've gotten these kinds of calls before where someone just is looking for a job and they find my number online or whatever, and they call and leave me a message. But usually it's like, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I do. Can you or somebody please call me back because I'm interested in the job? This dude literally called the CEO of a staffing company like I had just called and left him a message. And like with no information. Hey, it's Billy. I'm interested in the job. What job, Billy?
The problem is you didn't put the rate of pay in the job posting. See?
The problem is I never posted a job. And so, yeah, like that's like the world we live in. And people go, I don't know why Billy's mom's sitting at home talking to her girlfriends going, I don't know why Billy can't get a job. I do, because Billy's an idiot. That's why he can't get a job.
By the way, I think someone must have trolled you and put your number out there on Twitter and was like, call this number for more information about. So more phone.
By the way, please don't do that. Also, my number's already out there. I put my cell phone number on my LinkedIn profile.
Is it? Yeah, that would be
No, I'm like, hey, if I run a business, you want to get a hold of me, let's talk. By the way, I get very few calls because of that. So I think people, like when I first did that, people were like, oh my gosh, you're going to get spammed and you're going to have all these people calling you. It doesn't happen. I mean, if I get calls, they're usually legitimate calls. So I do have, from the blog and writing, like I have, like you'll have people that are like avid readers or whatever. And sometimes I'll get a call from like an avid reader, like out of nowhere, like on a Saturday afternoon. That's a little creepy.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And they call you they talk about your kids by name and I'm like, hey, what's up? They don't say what their name is.
Yeah.
That's awesome when that happens.
Yeah, I'm calling from Austin. Like what? Like, I don't know. So, hey, big news this week coming out of the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court voted on some Title VII civil rights stuff that, bars discrimination based on sex. And they kind of made a ruling for the first time. So basically stating that, hey, federal law now protects LGBTQ workers from discrimination. Which I think all of us, obviously, on this podcast would go, duh. This should have happened a long, long time ago. But really, for the first time, that it's actually now official and legal and big news. And obviously, coming in Pride Month, perfect timing, poetically for this announcement. Jlee, what's your take on this landmark decision?
Two things. One, I do wonder in other parts of the world or in other planets if they're looking at us saying, yeah, of course, like what took you so long? Why was this an issue? So sometimes it's hard to, step back and think about things in that way. But I think, the thing that it's gotten me thinking about is like we're talking about issues of gender identity, sex. And so, because there is a component in here around transgender workers, I really think that this is like an opening for some dialogue amongst HR pros around like, how do we define these things? Why do we define these things? Is it necessary? And I think there are probably like HR tech providers out there, like also grappling with this. There are, compliance things you have to factor in, but I just think it's a really interesting time to start thinking about like, yes, of course, like this, that was the ruling. You would have hoped it had gone that way, but I do think there's practical things for us to start thinking about around restrooms. What forms do you have people complete and why? Why are we tracking certain things? Does it matter? Do you know people's preferred pronouns and all of that? And I've got homework even for myself to do in that front, but that's where it's got me thinking.
Yeah, Katie.
So I'm with Jlee. I guess the first thing I say in a lot of really good organizations, and Tim, I know you'll come in and tell us what your thoughts are, but I think in a lot of organizations, I think I'm not sure a lot changes on the ground on a day-to-day basis around the office, especially for folks who already have representation in those communities. I think a lot of our companies have already figured out the value that, that those people bring to the organization. I am interested. I'll take Jlee's technical aspects one step further. I'm really interested if down the road, and I'll take it a different way than pronouns. I'm interested if we're going to self-ID. I think, when you get into the self-ID, I wonder if that's going to be a part of it. I would assume it would at some point. And then I think I also wonder for things like affirmative action plans and any kind of tracking, any type of goal setting for protected classes, whether that will come to fruition as well. I haven't read about that related to the landmark decision, but I'm just interested in those technical things. And I think those are the things, in addition to what Jlee mentioned, that we'll have to be thinking a little bit about. And I have to say this, Tim, and I'll throw it to you. I think this, when you think about a Supreme Court that is majority conservative, mm-hmm. I believe that this is one way that ultimately for all the messiness in America, and all the stuff that we're currently dealing with, and we've got a long history of that in America. I firmly and unapologetically believe that America has the ability to get it right. And I think when you look at a majority conservative Supreme Court, and them making this decision, I think it's like, yeah, that's what like common sense people do.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of places in the world where, you know, being a part of an LGBTQ identification is against the law, right? So it's, for me, it's great to actually have it finally in a federal law. It seems silly that we get that way. Jlee, I agree with you. Like, your first reaction is like, why are we collecting gender? But then I'm like, oh, really? We need to expand. I mean, we have to collect it because I need to know from a data perspective, are we being discriminatory at certain levels and things of that sort, whether it's interviewing, hiring, termination, promotion, salary. Like, if I don't have the data, then I'm really bad. And if all the data I have is super limited to male or female, then I'm totally missing the boat. And I will throw myself under the bus because I think when pronouns first came out as something we should be using, and I have Gen Z kids, my Gen Z kids would be like, you know, Dad, what's your deal? And I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get why I can't, my vernacular couldn't get me to call somebody a they because it didn't make sense in my brain. Like I wasn't talking like a real person. And then, like, I'm a huge fan of the TV show Billions, and Taylor Mason is one of the characters, and they, meaning that character is a they. She's see, I can't even say it. Like, I want to say she because she looks a she to me, but like it's so difficult. And so if I'm having difficult with that of somebody, I think who's actually recognizing they're having difficulty, imagine the vast majority of the culture in the U.S. population. You know, they is a great character, super smart, like everything I like about a person. And then it kind of hits me like, oh, I should be using the proper pronoun for that person. But I think it's so difficult to actually get yourself to change because for 50 years I've been in my own mind just thinking male, female. And so I do think it's super important because if I'm having a struggle with it, I know there's going to be so many other people going, well, no, you were born a male or a female and that's just the way it's going to be. And I'm like, no, that's why we need these laws to protect people.
Hey, Tim, what are the personal pronouns of WAGs on Billions? Can you define that for me? You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but he's a he, right?
Right. I'm joking because WAGs, for the uninitiated on Billions, Showtime, Sunday nights, is it fair to say he's reprehensible?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. He's like Rome in the worst days of Rome, basically.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Hey, one other thing about personal pronouns. Let me, and Jlee, I'll throw this to you because you brought this up first. I agree that we've got to dig in. And I think my reaction probably when it first came up, like Tim described in a lot of America, I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, let's do this. I think one overreach is you see people listing their personal pronouns on their LinkedIn profiles, right? Mm. Even if they're not they. You know, his, like, you know, I'm kind of bad at this from a traditional perspective, but I think one overreach, and I guarantee you it'll happen somewhere, is an organization recommending that everybody list their personal pronouns on things like their LinkedIn profiles. And what I would tell you is that will slow like the overall like acceptance of this. But like, you know, you've got to meet people where they are, and like you can't necessarily expect Johnny from accounting to list his personal pronouns. And I guarantee you there'll be like at least one company that really hard encourages people to do that.
It's interesting you say that because I have a friend back in Seattle, and, you know, Seattle stereotypically, notoriously quite liberal. We were talking and she said, wait, like, you're a progressive HR person. Like, why don't you force everyone in your company to list their pronouns? She's like, why haven't you done that? And I was like, whoa, I hadn't even thought about the idea of forcing.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
But like my husband actually came up with this in discussion recently too, because he was like, hey, what does this mean? My new boss has pronouns in her email signature. He's like, is this like, what is that? So it's interesting. It's starting to get out there. And he's like, well, why would she do that? What is the intent? And so you have people doing it on their own. You have some people on the spectrum who thinks everyone should do it. And so, yeah, the dialogue is out there. I see it on LinkedIn. I see it in Twitter. And I think one of the things I'm betting we're going to see happen soon is there will be a push in new hire paperwork, your HRMS, where you're going to ask people if they want to declare or have a preferred pronoun, that they'll provide that, just like we do Mr. Ms. In a lot of settings today. So I bet it's coming. But yeah, I'm with you. I can't imagine we go to the place of you gotta list it, and you gotta we're gonna have a directory where it is mandatory for everyone. I mean, we're probably not there yet.
Yeah, because self-ID is a little bit self-ID at the point of hire, or even at some point during your period of employment. Self-ID is different than what your friend suggested.
Yeah.
And I think I've grown in my own view of this, where I get it and I see it, but I'm as an HR leader, I want to bring as many people into the tent with acceptance and to be as progressive as possible. And I think when you start forcing people into a box and you start forcing them to take action on themselves, that's where you get some pushback, and it might actually slow the overall adoption.
Katie, I don't know if you have to force, again, you can. I mean, we could just sit there and, hey, that's our culture and this is what we're going to do. And if you want to opt into our culture, great. If you don't, then we probably don't want to hire you, and you probably don't want to be here anyways. I think the better way is if you have a leadership team that is driving D&I and inclusion, if you have them at it, you're naturally going to have others that, want to be a part of that culture, want to be a part of that team, want to move up, and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to follow that lead, right?
Yeah.
And I always go back to think of a decade or 2 decades ago when there was a big blow up of people would go and say, oh my gosh, Sheila, when are you due? And she's like, I'm not pregnant. And he's like, oh,
never,
never oh, and then we all learned, you don't say that. Well, I have some lesbian friends that look masculine, that they all have a story of someone saying sir to them and then being super offended. I think that's those things too, is once you've gotten your butt handed to you by doing something stupid like that, then you realize then maybe I should introduce myself and say, these are my pronouns, because I want to hear what somebody else's pronouns are. If you don't know, if you look at somebody and you go, I don't know, then you should say, hi, my name's Tim. I'm a him, his, whatever. And then they would come back and they would say theirs, right? Or they look at you like you're insane. Either way, that's a better way than going, I think you're male, but you're not, and I'm going to say it and embarrass myself completely, and also embarrass and offend you. That's not the right way to handle that.
So, Tim, I like your leadership example. I think that's a very progressive way to lead on the topic, and I think you get to a higher percentage of people understanding the vernacular by leading that way, rather than doing it like Jlee's friend was suggesting, to say starting on July 5th. We expect this to be updated. It's there's different waves of change, but I love the leadership angle, and I think that's true.
So, Katie, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about maybe saying the wrong things every once in a while.
Yeah.
And so out of Germany, Adidas, not Adidas.
I'm going to call it Adidas, if that's okay.
You can call it whatever you want.
I have to as well.
Yeah. The CHRO from Adidas actually resigned today. Tell me the story.
Yeah, so I'm going to read some text. So this is coming, and Tim, is that breaking news? Is that a brand new resignation?
Oh, I thought it was breaking news. Let me see real quick. Yeah, breaking news. Oh no, Adidas employees are calling for the resignation.
So let me give you the category. So Adidas, for those of us in America, sorry, for the listeners outside of America. So I think last week, this is 7 to 10 days ago, a 13-member coalition and more than 200 Adidas employees that represents called for the resignation of Karen Parkin, who's the brand's CHRO and member of its executive board. By the way, if you look at her LinkedIn profile, she is an operator before she became a CHRO. So that outcry, Tim and Jlee, stems from comments Parkin made last year at a company meeting in Boston at Adidas own brand Reebok. So she was getting a question regarding reports. She's getting a question from the audience regarding reports that Adidas was facing challenges and how it treated minority employees. So on that day, Parkin, sources at the conference described concerns over racial disparities as, quote, noise, unquote, and further suggested the company did not need to take action as the criticisms were only present in its North America offices for Adidas. So these 13 employees, 13-member coalition, the 200 employees it represents, called for a resignation. And, they're doing that in the last couple of weeks. But I think it underscores, Jlee, the fact that, there's so much going on today. And it underscores what I think I've always known, what we've always known, is you can't afford to have a bad day. Now, I'm not going to measure intent of what noise means. But even if I give her all the grace to say she was talking about challenges, Jlee, you really can't afford to have a bad day from a communications perspective as an HR leader, correct?
Hey friends, Marnie Robbins here, host of Vibe Makers, a podcast now on the Work Defined Network. Look, we all know workplace culture doesn't come from a slide deck. Gross. It comes from people. So on Vibe Makers, I talk to the folks shaping the experience of work from the inside out. The HR and people ops folk, founders, leaders, and misfits building culture through small bets, big beliefs, and a whole lot of trial and error. No fluff. Well, maybe a little fluff, but mainly just candid talk about what happens when you stop duct taping your culture together. Come check us out. Listen to Vibe Makers wherever you get your podcasts.
So I think that's correct. I mean, especially right now, like everyone is under immense scrutiny. I think things are heightened. There are sensitivities that are greater than ever. So you can't afford to have a bad day. And, we kind of talked about that with like Starbucks and Black Lives Matter and the debacle with their uniforms. Like you can't misstep, can't have a bad day. When you do, you got to quickly, like very quickly address it. And so there's a few things. I mean, one, it's like when you're at the top, you're number one, like you have to be like more cautious, more cognizant, more aware. But I don't know, the thing that I do struggle with is like things matter now more than ever. And like we are in the climate that we're in. But I also feel bad in this situation because like according to the report, this was a year, 2 years ago, like at a meeting that she had said this. Yep. Right. And so what someone said a few years ago that you dig it back up, I just think it puts people in a really tough situation. What I would guess is that like they went to that situation to say like, remember when this happened? They probably feel like it is indicative of other things. I'm just like conjecturing here. I don't really know, but like they all saw that as like, oh, let's use that as the example. But it's so tough. Like I feel for leaders, but then I know others would say, well, that's why you're paid the big bucks and you're in the position that you're in. So you got to be aware, be cautious, and proceed accordingly. But I don't know. The whole thing's tough.
Tim, when you hear somebody say noise with her, like with her operations background, if I was going to defend her, and I'm not, if I was going to defend her, if she's defending herself, she later said that she could have chosen, quote, a better word in describing how the company viewed issues of race. What do you got with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like one is I'm not a big, like Jay said, I'm not a big fan of the revisionist history part of this. But the best example I've seen of this is Howard Stern, who has done some awful, vulgar things in his career. But he's evolved over time. He's a much different person now on his radio show than he was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. And he did blackface, right? He got called out similar to Jimmy Fallon. And Howard just basically kind of came right out. And I'm not a listener. I read this, but came right out and just said, hey, I was wrong. I can't even imagine, myself doing that and the person I was then. And I've evolved and here's what, I support and here's what I've done and all this. And he had the data to be able to show like, here's who I am now. I think if this person, this Karen Parkin, you have a group of Black employees from Adidas that comes out and says, hey, this is the issue. And she said, you know what? That was an awful choice of word. That's not what I meant. Here's what I meant. Here's what I've done since to make, sure this becomes a non-issue. So I think there's always that problem, from that. Like, I think there's a part of this, KD, too, where you have a global company, you have somebody, she's out of the UK working for a German company that comes into the US and probably doesn't truly understand the dynamic of race here. As I've traveled across the world and been fortunate enough to, I've always found that when I've gone into these other countries, I'm shocked at some of the racism stuff that is prevalent, that hits me square in the face being an American. And that I look at my guests or people that I know that are there that literally have no idea and would never consider that racism because they're that far behind. So I know we have our own issues, but I'm like, I look at some of these countries that I've been able to travel to and go, holy crap. So when she comes over and she's like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal, and because here's what we're doing, well, of course that's going to come across awful. Also, I don't even know if she truly knows or believes based on, what's going on, if that's really, I don't know. Yeah. But I think I go back to your initial statement, which is we are not allowed to have a bad day in comms right now. And if you do, you're going to get destroyed and potentially it's going to cost you your job, which I think speaks to all the awful, vanilla, watered down communications that are being sent out right now.
Yeah. So one of the things the group said that they called for a resignation is they said that management, quote, doesn't grasp the discrimination minorities might face. And to your point, Tim, that, quote, the difference in perception is largest in Germany. So, it kind of underscores the fact that there are probably issues, well, not probably, there are issues globally with this, as well as just in the United States.
Germany has a little bit of history, right? I mean, 7 million dead Jews can kind of.
Yeah, sure does. There's no good way to follow up on that. I think the other thing, it's hard, Jlee, I'll let you kind of close this out. It's hard for me to fathom, if you're in an HR leadership role, it's hard for me to fathom not hearing the question and acknowledging the fact that, your company has stuff to work on, before you say something like, not noise, but you say, and we've got to continue to execute the business plan while we improve in these areas, right? So the noise kind of suggests that she's saying we can't be like focused on that, but it's just hard. Jlee, I'll let you close this out. It's just hard for me to imagine not hearing that question and at least acknowledging the fact that the company has something to work on, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you raise, I really like, which is this, it's about like in a position of leadership, like what you don't want to do, and I'm sure all of us have been guilty of at some point in time, is to be so cocky and confident to believe that everything you're doing is right enough and perfect. And I think to your point, it's a really great lesson in leadership around like there's an aspect of humility that is needed, especially when we're talking about, empathy, 100%. And so that probably for me, like now that you raise that, is like the biggest takeaway here around putting that empathy hat on, especially as a chief HR officer, listening and, being able to acknowledge that there's no way we're doing things right or perfectly. So I like that. That's my lesson of the day. Thank you.
Now I think empathy is called for. So we'll be following that. I'm sure we might talk about that in the future because I'm thinking, Tim, that one's probably not over at this point.
Not over.
So we'll be back to it. But Tim, I know we're going to end on a light topic. Let's talk about slacking remote employees. Let's talk about it, Tim. I'm going to get you all wired up. Talk to us about slackers and people who can't handle micromanagement.
Well, no, I think so. Obviously, what we're hearing, like you and all three of us have had like individual conversations with each other of just how literally exhausted, just overwhelmed we are with everything, not just going on in the world, but also like the change of work and what, how we're trying to work with our teams and stuff like that. And I think our employees are at home or whatever location they're at, and they're feeling the same way. And then what you have is a bunch of bosses who are trying to prove that they're doing their job, right? That they're making things happen, or they're keeping things going. And so then you have like, and then I think we're all like we're at wit's end with the world right now. So you have rude emails and messaging, and we're all on these different platforms where they're coming in through email and through Teams and through Slack and through text messages. And they feel, I think a lot of the employees are feeling micromanaged. At the same time, we're all leaders. And so I asked all of you, do you micromanage your teams? I personally feel like I don't have to. I say that only, and my team's probably like, yeah, whatever, Tim. I don't have to, because we have really great measures in place. So I don't have to micromanage them, because I micromanage them through metrics and I already know what they're doing. So either they're doing it or they're not doing it. I don't care how they get it done, just get it done, kind of thing. Jessica, I know you're micromanaging your team. So how do you micromanage them, and why? Like, do they want to kill you right now, or what's going on?
Well, I joke. Maybe is like being very attentive to detail. Is that micromanaging? Is that the same thing? I'm a details person. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Are you more details now than you were in the office? Did you let things go because you could see the intent was good or whatever, and so you were less likely?
So I am of the belief that everything communicates. And what that means for me is that, like, I pay attention to the tiniest of details. You have 2 different fonts on a page. I don't like that. You got extra spaces after a sentence or in between 2 words. Like, everything communicates. So if you say paying attention to detail is micromanaging, then maybe I'm guilty. But here's what I will say. I think if I'm going to ask for any grace in this situation, if people are in a situation like me, like, we're dealing with so much uncertainty right now, and like dealing with things that we've never had to deal with before. And so I do feel like there is a level of, greater scrutiny, micromanaging, attention to detail, whatever you want to call it, that like I'm asking for some grace on that, because like we got to talk through more. Like, we've got to try to figure out how to navigate some of these things together. And if it feels like micromanaging, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to get through all these unknowns and the uncertainty.
So Jlee, I'll piggyback on that and say one of the things that I know has frustrated my friend Tim Sackett is when he sees an article, which the CNBC article that we're kind of working off of is part of this. Tim's not a big believer in Zoom fatigue. Like Tim doesn't want to hear about Zoom fatigue.
Made up snowflake term.
Yeah. So, Tim, I've already told the world like what your position, as you did, is on Zoom fatigue. Jlee, is there Zoom fatigue or detail meeting fatigue that exists now that didn't exist when you were all in the office a good bit in January and February, even if some of your people were remote or working from home a day or two?
It's probably the same.
Probably the same?
Yeah.
Welcome to Jlee's world.
I know. Are we going to now dissect it? I should lay down on the couch and we can talk about my problems.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I think the thing goes the other way too, is that I think you can trust people and not connect enough. And that lets people float a little bit. I think that probably hurts your engagement. Like, I think there are people, I think the thing that's going to be written, Tim, in CNBC, actually, I was kind of interested to see this article coming from them, because that's kind of where I go, like, for down the middle news right now, because it's all financial related, right? And money is money. But I think we don't see the flip side of that. I think people, Tim, only report on are we micromanaging too much? They don't really report on the fact, and I bet this is true, that some managers aren't connecting enough with their people. And for that reason, people are floating away kind of from the organizational like brand, and they're probably floating away from affiliation on the brand. Do you buy that, Tim?
I do. I think, and what it is you're going to have certain individuals that are probably even in office, they were always already keeping in touch with you on a regular basis, stopping by the office, doing that. You're going to have those ones that if you never asked them to come to your office, or you never went to find them, you might not talk with them for a week on end, right? And then now when they're home and you're home, it just becomes much more disconnected. The Zoom fatigue though thing, Katie, come on. Like, you know what's worse than Zoom fatigue? It's not having a job.
Yeah, I've heard that in your email strings. Yeah, I've got that
not having a Zoom meeting because you're unemployed. Zoom fatigue. Are you kidding me? With all the crap going on in the world, you're going to tell me that you're tired of being on a video conference meeting? Give me a break.
See, you know what that is, though? So, like, I work with a lot of people who were remote already. And part of the fatigue, though, to be fair to them, is they're like, we've been working remote all this time and we didn't have to show our face on video. And now because you all are working from home, you want to see us. And now you're making us get on video and show our face. So I do think that's part of the fatigue. But I'm like, yeah, I do want to see your face. That's the new world.
So, Jlee,
that's micromanaging? Because you want to see their face? Like, I don't buy that.
Jlee, I think the percentage of managers who are either requiring that or highly recommending it, do you agree as we get into like day 70, 80, whatever it is now, that's going down, correct? Is it 90? Okay. That's going down now. It's actually more acceptable now than it's been not to show your face. Do you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
Like in my organization, I think people are getting more used to it and they're getting comfortable and they are showing their faces more. And they're showing their faces however they're going to show up. I think also part of it is these video conferencing technologies are getting better and more fun. And so they're taking advantage of that. No, so I think it's either like steady or increasing.
So I write a little bit. I don't know if you guys know that, but I write on the side. And I'm going to do a feature for CNBC. And it's going to have like Tim, it's going to be Tim like at his home office, which he's never at. Like he's been in the office from like day 3 of this thing or day 2. But I'm going to do this feature. It's Tim in his home office and he's looking kind of sad because somebody like me hasn't connected enough with him. And I'll tell you, I don't know it's a high percentage, but there are a percentage of people. Don Burke and I did a podcast. I do another podcast called Best Boss Ever. And we were talking about leadership brands. And one of the like 6 brands that we kind of came up with, you can be as a leader, is just the individual contributor. And think about it. That's probably the manager who's managing for the first time, Jlee, who was a great individual contributor, hasn't really learned how to manage. That's the person, Jlee, that isn't connecting enough with their people, because they were never connecting in the office anyway. They were just heads down, doing the spreadsheet, managing the brand. Jlee, what other things would you add to that?
I think that's 100% right. That individual contributor, yes, doing those things, hasn't figured out. And you know what? That's a really tough position to be in, right? Like you're new in a leadership role. How do you lead in an environment where you're in person and then all of a sudden you're not? So I feel for that person.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get
micromanaging now.
So sad picture of Tim, Jlee. It's like a sad, wistful like picture, like he's lonely.
Looking out the window.
Is engagement over? Will be the title of the article. Is engagement over for Tim?
That's a hard picture. I'm not a sad person by nature. So I'm going to get us out of here on this question because one of the reasons I think that we have managers micromanaging their teams is that they believe that let's say that, you had somebody in the office for 40 hours a week and now they're at home working. I believe that 25 to 30 hours of working at home potentially equates to 40 hours in an office. Your guys' reaction to that statement?
Do the hours for me again, Tim. How much?
25 to 30 hours at home equate to 40 hours in an office. And here's why. I'm not going to give you the breakdown, but I'm saying if I'm a boss that thinks the person should be working 40 hours at home and I'm an employee at home that's so much more productive and getting more done, do I feel like now I'm being micromanaged because they're like, wait a minute, it's 3:00, Tim. Why aren't you at your computer? And then we've seen like the huge increase in companies going after software to like actually measure that their employees are actually at their laptop or at their workstation by like keystrokes and all this stuff, and like really coming down hard on that kind of stuff, which I think is just the worst kind of micromanaging.
I think under normal circumstances, not in the middle of a global pandemic, I probably agree with you. Yeah, like you're more productive when you work from home. But I'm telling you, I'm not working from home. I'm trying to manage a household and young children while trying to work on the side. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Preach, Jlee. Give it to him. How dare Tim Sackett?
Wait. Says the woman working in her son's bedroom right now.
Right now, literally in my son's bedroom with the door locked, and I keep looking over my shoulder to see if someone going to be like jiggling the handle any moment. That is life.
Oh, how dare Tim Sackett? That's what I got.
That's what it is. All right. That's what we all have. That's it for this week. HR Famous. I am Tim Sackett for Jessica Lee and Kris Dunn. We are out.